This month on Hunt Camp Mail.
Mix it all together into a really tasty shooting technique soup. My first snow Mexican this month. You know, they put shark's teeth on a tigerfish mouth. Don't act creepy. You know, and I mean that in a heterosexual context, not a German hunting party one. Maybe that's why Utards are Utards. What kind of favors are you offering me, man? Should I be worried? Welcome to the May 2024 edition of Hunt Camp Mail, where I'll respond to viewer questions and comments that were emailed to me. May is when saltwater and freshwater fishing gets really hot, but unfortunately so does the weather. Turkey season and spring bear hunting has ended, so most hunters are kind of sitting around in the doldrums right now until dove, duck, or deer season opens up for them. May is also the start of safari season in most of Africa, and for those traveling to the Dark Continent, I wish you luck. I received more letters this month than I've received since I started doing Hunt Camp Mail, and even though these episodes don't get a lot of views, I sure do get a lot of letters, so let's get to May's mail. And our first letter for May is from Samuel in northern Utah. Samuel wrote, I love your channel, Desert Dog, except for all the negative attention that Utards get. I hate to admit it, but Utah does have the worst hunters in the country, even worse than the guys in Texas. You wouldn't believe the things I've seen hunters and guides do in this state. The worst part is that the Utah DWR does nothing when you report illegal activity to them. We have the laziest game wardens in the country. You hand deliver a hunting guide who is taking clients on private property without permission, and they completely ignore it. This is why Utards are Utards. There's no consequences for their action by the DWR in this state. Well, you know, usually I'm the wrong guy to come to if you want to bash game wardens, and I honestly think we need more of them, but you might be right about Utah. A few months ago, I fished the lower Provo River for brown trout, and I went to a public access point with public parking, walked down a legal public access trail, and a landowner put up concrete barriers and razor wire all along the riverbank. And this was below the high water mark, which is illegal and arguably dangerous. You know, knowing that this was illegal, I reported it. Then we ran into a couple of locals that told us that several property owners were doing this in public access spots. And he stated that dozens of locals have reported this problem and the DWR has done nothing about it. I also joined a local fly fishing group on social media for that area. And now the adjacent property owner to that has gated and blocked off the public access parking area. So that's been reported as well, but apparently nothing is being done. So I don't live in Utah, but I do see your point of view now. And maybe that's why Utards are Utards. And our next letter for the month of May is from Shane in California. Shane wrote, Hey Desert Dog, I'm looking to buy a new scope for my rifle. It's chambered in 270 Win and will be used for deer in California mostly, but some out-of-state trips to Nevada as well. What is your preferred method of adjusting for wind? I've read some guys just hold for wind in the reticle, like the Leupold Windplex, or some dial it in. Any insight would be appreciated, as I think it would help me pick what scope to buy. Well, Shane, thank you for contacting me. And, you know, I never dial for wind. And it doesn't matter if I'm hunting or I'm target shooting or competition shooting. I always hold for wind in my reticle. A Windplex reticle or some type of wind gauging reticle is perfect for this, but I usually don't hold for wind on anything inside of 200 yards, which is where I do about 95% of my hunting. But with your 270 at 250 yards, drift is probably going to be about 4 to 4.5 inches, and it will be over 6 inches at 300 yards. But so when I get past maybe 250 yards, I start seriously thinking about wind. Especially if I'm going for a really precise shot, like a shoulder shot, where it has to be right on there. A reticle with windage marks on it makes this a lot easier. So if that's what you're going to do, by all means, get a scope with a reticle like that. And our next letter is from Mark from Bakersfield, California. Mark wrote, "What kind of gear setup do I need to zero my rifles? A lead sled, a combo of front shooting rest with a bag in the rear, or just a couple of bags? I have relatively light recoiling rifles, a 223 and a 6.5 Creedmoor, that I haven't ever taken to the range yet." Well, this is a pretty common question on this channel. I probably answered it a dozen times, but since you're from Bakersfield, California, I'm going to answer it again for you. Get a really good adjustable front rest like this that's fully adjustable, and a good quality rabbit ear rear bag. Once you have a setup like this, you need to master shooting fundamentals while you're using this rest, like breathing, trigger control, and follow through. And most people lack these fundamental skills, so even though they have a great setup for shooting off the bench or for zeroing in their rifle or doing load development, they don't take advantage of this good system because their fundamentals are poor. And our next letter is from Brad in Wisconsin. Brad wrote, "I drew an early season time slot for my turkey zone and had to contend with a lot of rain, wind, and even snow. Fortunately, it all came together one cold morning when I had 2 toms show up together. I had to wait for a clear shot so I wouldn't risk a double hit, and one of the toms eventually separated, giving me an opportunity to harvest a beautiful bird. I was also able to take my son out on the trout stream for the first time. He braved the rain, the cold, and the hike along the river. We even caught one for dinner just before we had to hike back out. Once in a while, your YouTube short video with you holding that tank of a tigerfish from your last safari pops up in my feed. I was wondering if you ever got a replica mount made of that great fish." Well, thank you for the letter, Brad. And here's some pictures of Brad's turkey and his son's fish. That is an absolute beast of a brook trout, man. I catch a lot of those every year in our backcountry lakes and streams when I'm up in the high Sierras, but nothing anywhere that big. So congrats to your son, man. That's a beautiful turkey, too, that you shot. And I did receive my replica mount, but I'm not very happy with it, to tell you the truth. I had it done by a place kind of in your neck of the woods, and I'm pretty disappointed in their work. The measurements for girth and length are shorter than what I specified, which I'm not at all happy with. And the teeth, I don't know if you can see the teeth on this. The teeth on this are way off. They put shark's teeth on a tigerfish mouth, and tigerfish have really thin, pointy teeth. And, the paint and the details on this tigerfish look great, but it's not the size that I specified, and the teeth are way off. And in correspondence with them, somebody slipped up, and I found out that they basically use generic molds, and everything's made from generic molds that they buy. So you're stuck with whatever size and shape they have, but that's not what they claim on their website or advertise. So I'm leaving their name out of it right now because I'm currently involved in seeking a solution. Our next letter is from John in Georgia. John wrote, "Hello, Desert Dog. You may have covered it, but have you ever used or considered using those fans that can be placed in the bore of a bolt-action rifle that claim to quickly cool the barrel of the rifle?" Yeah, I use a barrel cooler all the time. I honestly don't think I can live without one of these when I do load development. I'd say that they cut my range time probably in half when I use them. And there's lots of different brands and types on the market, but I use the Rifle Cool brand, and I've been satisfied with it. And our next letter is from Mark in Three Forks, Montana. Mark wrote, "I just settled in Three Forks, Montana from Tarpon Springs, Florida. I want to throw an ultralight spinner at river fish before committing to fly fishing. I just gave away a ton of saltwater gear, but I still retained my basic Florida flats fishing gear. Any recommendations are appreciated." Thank you for the letter, Mark. And I was in Three Forks, Montana about 2-3 months ago, and what a great place. Of course, when I was there, it was cold as hell and snowing like crazy, which is something you're going to have to get used to coming from Tarpon Springs, Florida. But to your question, I'm going to be blunt here and just flat out tell you to jump right into fly fishing now. You live at ground zero for fly fishing. It's basically a mecca where over 1 million people make an annual pilgrimage to throw flies where you're at. Everyone there in that town is a fly angler. Almost every visitor to that town is a fly angler, and the town's culture revolves around fly fishing. So spin fishing will require you, to modify every lure you have with a single barbless hook. And if you go out there with your spinning gear, I'm just going to be honest with you here, you're going to get a lot of dirty looks from the locals. So rather than invest in a bunch of spinning gear, a nice 5-weight setup is going to be perfect for you. Just, buy a nice 5-weight setup and learn to fly fish. Trust me, once you start catching fish on a fly rod, your spinning gear is just going to collect dust. And also, when you return back to Florida to visit family, you're going to be wanting to chase tarpon on a fly rod this time. So I highly recommend that you do that. And our next letter is from Antoine in Maryland. Antoine wrote, "Hey, Desert Dog, what are your thoughts on the 378 Weatherby Magnum? I noticed you have never spoken about it in your previous content. If you can give me your pros and cons on the 378 Weatherby, it would help me make a decision on investing in it or not." Well, thanks for writing me, Antoine. 378 Weatherby Magnum ammunition is almost $200 for a box of 20. That's crazy, right? And even if you reload, brass is way more expensive than 375 H&H brass. That Weatherby uses 25 to 30% more powder. So the 378 Weatherby Magnum will suck your bank account dry if you're not careful. The 378 Weatherby also burns a whole lot of slow powder and is, roughly 200 feet per second faster than the 375 H&H. And that's a huge step up in recoil, trust me. And, it also means that you need a longer barrel. So it's going to be a heavier rifle. And you're also stuck with a Weatherby Mark V rifle, kind of with a suspect stock on it and no controlled round feed. If this is for dangerous game, which I'm assuming it is, just bump up to a common 416, 416 Rem Mag, 416 Rigby, 416 Ruger. And, most dangerous game shots in Africa are going to be inside of 50 yards, and they're never over 100 yards. And with this perspective, it's easy to see that Weatherby cartridges are just a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist. Although I love the old classic cartridges for nostalgia reasons, you'll never hear me recommend proprietary cartridges. And I'd never take a proprietary cartridge to Africa with me. Like I stated before, if you're looking for somebody to justify making things complicated, I'm the wrong guy to ask. And our next letter is from Leo. Leo must not watch a lot of Hunt Camp Mail because he didn't tell us where he's from. Leo wrote, "Hi, Desert Dog. I'm making a 9.3 by 62 and going for a 26-inch barrel. I watched your 35 Wayland video and saw how you opted for the number 4 contour barrel from Pacnor. I want a barrel from Pacnor too. I was wondering, would a number 5 contour barrel be better than a number 4, or would it be too heavy? My goal is to have an 8.5 pound rifle bare naked, or 10 pounds with scope, bases, and everything else. I like a 26-inch barrel, so I thought maybe a number 5 contour would make it too heavy or unwieldy. What do you recommend?" Well, Leo, I think you have a good build plan, except you need one revision on that. I'll start by saying definitely get the number 5 barrel contour for the 9.3. And this will give you just under maybe 3/16 of an inch barrel wall thickness at the muzzle, which is great for a dangerous game rifle. The 9.3 by 62 has a great case volume to bore area ratio, and it's loaded with, faster or medium burn rate powders. And this means that the cartridge doesn't mind shorter barrels. A 26-inch barrel is just way overkill for a 9.3 by 62. And you're never going to meet your weight goals with a 26-inch barrel on that gun anyway. I personally recommend a barrel in the maybe 22 or 23-inch range for your 9.3 by 62. And you'll get a complete powder burn with that 23-inch barrel. So get a number 5 contour barrel and scrap your whole idea of a 26-inch barrel. And our next letter is from Mason in British Columbia, Canada. My first snow Mexican this month. Mason wrote, "Very interesting video about barrel band sling mounts on bolt action rifles. I too have recently seen several custom rifles made for deer calibers that have a barrel band. As you pointed out, it makes no sense at all. In the context of dangerous game bolt action rifles, the barrel band sling mount seems to be a product of recent history. My old safari rifles had simple stud attachments on the bottom of the barrel. Why did they ditch that design?" And this is a great question and kind of relates to a video I'm currently working on. But to answer your question, Winchester was basically the first company to mass produce affordable safari rifles. And if you look at their history, from the Model 70 Africa, in the late 50s, to the Super Express, to the Classic Super Express, all of them had small sling mounts soldered to the bottom of the barrel. And it wasn't until the Classic Safari Express rifle was released in 1999 that we saw an actual barrel band that went around the circumference of the bore, rather than a piece of steel soldered to the bottom of the barrel. The reason that custom rifles had barrel bands and Winchester switched to a barrel band with the Safari Express was for reliability and durability. Those little sling mounts soldered to the bottom of the barrel did have a bad habit of falling off the rifle at the worst moment. So a press fit barrel band with solder sweated underneath it will never fall off your rifle. So the barrel band has proven to be a superior design. So it's become the standard on safari rifles for probably the last 25 years. And our next letter is from Jacob from Chico, California. Jacob wrote, "I watch every Hunt Camp Mail episode. You tend to wander off topic into subjects that make you evaluate the current state of humanity. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Your commentary is very interesting and intelligent. What I don't understand is the pessimism that you view the world with. You portray yourself as a student of history, yet act like people are getting historically bad. History shows us crusades, inquisitions, mass slavery, mass genocides, and rape as a way of life. Modern humanity is actually evolving into something better than what we historically were. Let's see some optimism from the dog of the desert. Ooh. You're probably correct, Jacob, and my wife would definitely agree with you. I can be the stereotypical pessimist at times, and perhaps my pessimism has tainted the experience for some people in some way, shape, or form, and maybe I should tone it down a little bit, I guess. But regardless of whether or not I heed your advice, you did force me to engage in some form of self-reflection on the matter. Sometimes it takes a random guy on the internet to teach you how to be a man. And I mean that in a heterosexual context, not a German hunting party one. And you are correct. Western society has moved the bar of civility higher than it was historically. I'll agree with what you said. But we're definitely not ripping the hearts out of slaves to appease the gods, and we're not burning women alive at the stake because their husbands accused them of being witches. So we've improved in that regard. But I believe the mental state of modern humans is definitely in a different place than it has been historically. The Roman Empire never demanded that its citizens recognize other people as cats.
My son does identify as a cat, but I cannot take him to a vet because I tried that, and the veterinarian told me that because he has human anatomy, that he does not know how to work on him or diagnose him with anything, and he legally cannot. So, and while I do think that is a form of discrimination, because, my son, if he says he's a cat, he is a cat. And he needs to be treated like that, like one, But,
Abigail enjoyed being a kitten, and Adam enjoyed being a kitten caregiver.
About this pillow.
I like this. Used mostly to get each other's attention.
meow.
Okay, then we have the dissatisfied meow. Then the angry meow, but we only use this one on rare occasions because overall we're a very happy kitten family.
So what are you excited to
They put tails on and they demand that they have a litter box in the school.
Claims like American man who goes by the name Catman. Or to his friends, just plain Cat. Cat's life dream is to transform himself into a tiger, and he's well on the way.
I've been a cat my entire life. I've always related to cats.
And crawls around on all fours.
Your sneakers, please, like I asked you to.
A few weeks later, Jake requested that I started feeding him his meals out of the cat food dishes. That's when things started getting a little concerning.
And our next letter is from Frank from Kentucky. Frank wrote, I want to start planning a 100% free-range buffalo hunt for 2025. That pretty much eliminates South Africa and anything affordable in Namibia. What country do you recommend? This is also a question I think I've answered several times on Hunt Camp Mail already, but we'll do it again, Frank. The answer is that I honestly can't answer that. Africa is in a constant state of change, politically, socially, and even ecologically. And, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm trying to plan my 2025 Africa hunt just like you are right now. Zimbabwe, which I hunted the last time I went to Africa, is experiencing extreme famine right now. I mean, people are starving to death right now. And meat poaching is rampant and just devastating right now in many areas. So the hunts have been tough in a lot of safari areas. ISIS is active in Mozambique again, and the violence is getting out of control in Mozambique. I mean, a lot of people are getting murdered there. Zambia is experiencing extreme drought right now and a historic cholera outbreak. Muslim extremists have taken root in Burkina Faso, and it's no longer safe to visit that country. Uganda is a political powder keg right now, and I can't afford to hunt in Tanzania. Add to this that safari hunting companies are also constantly in a state of flux. A company will be the greatest outfit in Africa one year and out of business the next. And this is why I don't promote guide services. So planning a hunting trip to a truly wild free range area in Africa is a gamble. All you could do is pick a historically politically stable country and try to stay with a reputable safari company. And that's all you could do. And ultimately, you're just going to have to pick a trip, put down deposits, and ride with your plans. And our next letter is from Joseph from Lakewood, Colorado. Joseph wrote, after 22 years of hunting, I'm finally going to start reloading. Doing research, I found your channel to have the best advice. I also like that your point of view comes from an experienced hunter who is an expert on the 30-06. I watched your video on powders for the 30-06, but it doesn't answer a specific question I have. I plan to use 165 grain bullets on mule deer and 180 grain bullets for elk. Good choice. What powder would you pick to load both 165 grain and 180 grain bullets in 30-06? I only want to keep one powder in stock. Without a question, H4350 is the correct answer. H4350 will give you top velocity and optimum case fill with both bullet weights, in my opinion. H4350 is also the most temperature stable and consistent powder that I think I've ever used in my life. It's also a powder that almost all barrels like when it falls into the desired burn rate. For 30-06 with 165 to 180 grain bullets, H4350 just provides the perfect powder burn rate, in my opinion. So that's what I would go with. Our next letter is from Kabir from Fresno, California. Kabir wrote, you show young hunters how to be a man, and a man you are. I am in need of instruction on using rifles with big heavy recoil. I will compensate you or give you favors in return for your expert instruction. Please contact me so that we may meet in person. What kind of favors are you offering me, man? Should I be worried? You definitely sound like a more dedicated fan than most, and I thank you for that. Don't worry about meeting me or showering me with favors. I'll post a video in the next 2 weeks or so on how to use proper technique to control recoil when you're shooting a dangerous game rifle. So make sure you subscribe to my channel so you're notified when I post that video. And our next letter is from Oliver in Australia. Oliver wrote, the 458 lot recoil video was brutal. Not because of the recoil of the 458 lot, but because those people would own one and not know how to shoot it. I watched a few of your videos where you shoot very large guns, and when you shoot a 458 lot, it looks like less recoil than most people shooting a 308. Can you do an instructional video on how to handle these big guns so these wankers can learn how to shoot correctly? Wankers. I actually have a lot of material on proper shooting technique on my channel. Regrettably, it's spread out between numerous videos, old and new. And I did a video years ago called Offhand Shooting for the Hunter. And that video on its own merits is probably the best offhand shooting video on the internet. But right after I posted that video, other influencers immediately copied it. And some of them, like those Vortex Nation wankers, obviously use my video as a script for their own video. But because you seem like a fine Aussie, and maybe like the previous person who requested this, maybe you'll offer me some favors. I'll do a taming recoil video. It won't be hard to do, because I'll just pull content from some of my past videos, add a few new things, and mix it all together into a really tasty shooting technique soup. So stay tuned for that video in the coming weeks. And our next letter is from Joseph from San Diego, California. Joseph wrote, I found and bought what was described as a rare Africa hunting rifle, a BSA Majestic and 458 Winchester Magnum. I haven't shot it yet. Do you think it's worth cleaning up and taking to Africa to hunt with? Well, Joseph, all BSA Majestic rifles were push feed. Before that, I think they had a controlled round feed one based off of Mauser action called the Royal or something like that. But all of the Majestic rifles were push feed actions. The barrel also had slots cut into it to kind of operate as an integral muzzle brake. And as you can imagine, people hated that feature, and most owners ended up cutting the tip of the barrel off to remove that muzzle brake portion. Safari hunters also didn't like that the magazine floor plate release button was inside the trigger guard, and many users would accidentally dump the contents of the magazine at the worst time. Actually, with those rifles chambered in 458 Win Mag, the floor plate would sometimes swing open on its own during recoil. And many of those 458 Majestics were sent to Rhodesia for the Parks and Wildlife Department for use in the hands of the game rangers, I think in the late 1950s. And the rangers ended up pinning the floor plate shut on those guns and removing the muzzle brake portion of the barrel and having a new front sight installed. So they did extensive modifications on those. But the magazine floor plate issues on those rifles were responsible for a lot of really close calls and documented near-death experiences. One guy even got mauled really bad. A PH got mauled really bad by a lion when, after his first shot, the magazine opened up and dumped the contents out. So the rifles do have limited collector value these days, but I don't think they're an optimal gun to take into the field for a dangerous game hunt. Our next letter is from Pete in Glendale, Arizona. Pete wrote, what first aid supplies do you bring with you while hunting? I'm not talking about hunting near a car or backpack hunting. What first aid supplies, if any, do you carry for a typical day hunt on foot? I think that's a great question. And I have a small trauma kit that I always carry in my day pack, upland vest, or turkey vest. And, this isn't some type of full-featured kit, but this trauma kit is enough to save a life. And let me show you what's inside of it. So this is what's in my hunting and shooting trauma kit right here. And if I'm anywhere near firearms, especially when other people are using firearms, I always have a tourniquet in my kit. If your extremities are struck by an errant shot or even a negligent discharge, this will save your life. But you need to know how to properly use a tourniquet and when to use it. I also carry Celox to stop bleeding, particularly if a gunshot wound is involved. This is what I would use. But once again, you need to know how and when to use it. I also carry an Israeli bandage in my kit, and these have so many uses, it's crazy. These will do anything from hemorrhage control to immobilizing a limb. So these are pretty handy. And I also have some gauze pads and and ABD pad too. And if you have some advanced medical training, a couple of these vented chest seals to prevent a tension pneumothorax could save a life. And I also carry some steri strips with me to treat cuts in the field. I've used these in the field before when a friend cut his hand really bad while he was quartering a deer, and these work. And I also carry some moleskins in my kit, in case I get a hot spot in my hunting boots. And these will absolutely save a hunt, trust me. And of course, I have some cleaning pads, antiseptic wipes, ointment, and Band-Aids for small cuts and scrapes out in the field. And I also take a tube of Tylenol with me for pain or headaches, especially, once in a while you'll get a headache out in the field. And this is important right here. I always carry tweezers on me to remove thorns, cactus, bee stings, and splinters. Probably out of everything in here, these definitely get used the most. Also, in addition to this, if you need an EpiPen or any type of special medication, make sure you carry it with you. So as you can see, most of this trauma kit is geared more towards controlling hemorrhaging. And, as a hunter, you got to think gunshot wound, either an errant bullet from somebody else or a negligent discharge, or, a severe knife wound while you're field dressing or processing an animal out in the field. So this is what I use. And I thought it was a fantastic question. And, I think I'm actually going to do a dedicated video on this kit. And our next letter is from Weston in Oklahoma. Weston wrote, I am not a competition shooter. The only time I fire my rifle is if I'm hunting or shooting targets for practice. To save money, I also reload. Also to save money, my rifle shoots .308 because brass is very cheap and available, even when there are shortages. A friend of mine who considers himself a master at reloading recommends that I turn the necks on all of my brass. What do you think I should do? Well, Weston, the simple answer is no. For what you do, there is absolutely no reason to turn necks at all. Don't let an expert complicate a very simple thing here. And as a matter of fact, I stopped turning necks years ago, even on my match ammunition. And I also think that you're wise beyond your years for picking a cartridge that's cheap to reload and has great brass availability. This is why the 30-06 is my go-to hunting cartridge. People who try to be cute by picking an obscure or trendy cartridge as their primary cartridge always end up being the ones crying during every brass or ammunition shortage. So you are one of the smart ones. And our last question for the month is from Mike in California. Mike wrote, I am interested in getting a new Winchester Model 70. I like what you had to say about the gun. My question is, where did you purchase yours? Living here in the Bay Area, most gun stores are not very good. I was wondering if you had a recommendation. I was also wondering what you would recommend, .308 versus .270 or something different. I will be hunting deer in California. Well, thank you for the letter, Mike. And, completely ditched the idea of cruising around gun stores in California to find the gun that you want. That's not what most of us do these days in the state. What you need to do is talk to some local gun nuts and see what FFL that they use. Then contact that FFL and establish a relationship with them. Then, order exactly what you want and have it shipped to that FFL. Most of these FFLs work out of their house, so don't act creepy if you want to be invited to their home, because they're really selective about who they let in. But ordering it online and having a gun sent to your FFL is going to save you hundreds of dollars over buying a gun from a gun store in this state. Just make sure that the seller that you're buying the gun from ships to California. Most of them do, but a few of them don't. And lastly, you mentioned the 270 Winchester as a possible deer cartridge. And I think that's a fantastic cartridge for the small blacktails in your area. And it's a great cartridge for Sierra mule deer. The 270 might be the perfect deer cartridge, so stick with that. Well, that wraps up all the letters for this month. Here's some memes for the month of May. Unlike most hunting influencers and hunting personalities, I actually provide a rare experience on YouTube by giving you a direct email to contact me. And I actually read and respond to those comments. But as a friendly reminder, if you guys include me in chain mails, group discussions, news notifications, or calls to action, I'm going to block you from my email. I have so much going on in my life, between running a business, maintaining my personal life, and enjoying outdoor adventures, that running this channel for basically no financial gain can be very taxing at times. So help me out by keeping the spam out of my email. Well, I have some great videos planned for next month, including a highly requested gun review video and an instructional video about shooting techniques for recoil management. You can reach me with any questions or comments at desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. Thank you for watching, and as always, good hunting.